So this week, the second week of April here in 2025, two planets are stationing direct. Mercury stations direct at the beginning of the week, Monday the 7th. By the time this video is released, Mercury will have stationed direct. I'll probably get this out Tuesday, Wednesday in the middle of this week, but at the end of the week, on the 13th of April, could be 12 April, depending on your time zone, Venus stations direct. And so it's important because you have two planets in the same week saying, hey, there's some forward movement here, there's a pivot. And they're of course stationing right in the same little part of the zodiac in Pisces, in the last 10 degrees of Pisces. And so that's what I want to talk about in this video, feeling into the importance of this week, this moment of 2025, and what it can tell us about how we are preparing for the rest of the year or the next few months. And this is something that's been on my radar a long time. I made a video last September, I believe it was, maybe October, about this pivot moment in April. This was one of my top 3 transits because it's now where you have all 7 planets direct of the traditional. They're all moving forward now after this week, meaning that all of the rulers of our houses have forward movement, will be extending into new degrees. So there's a real sense of forward movement that this week is a pivot into, and that will last until Mercury stations retrograde or has a retrograde cycle July, August. So there's a long stretch here where we can get into some new realities and new domains of our world. And it's been a long time since we've had something like this because we had the Mars retrograde cycle. It really starts on 4 September when Mars entered Cancer last year. We knew that the Cancer sector would undergo these Mars renewals. Mars is still in Cancer as I record this, many months later. Venus, the beginning of 2025, entered Pisces for January, I believe, depending on the time zone, and it's in Pisces still. We're here in April, so that's 4 months later. So there's been these elongated renewal processes with several planets, and it's not until this week, second week of April 2025, that everything's moving forward. First, just to say, what is Pisces? That's where Mercury is stationing direct, 26 degrees. Venus stations direct, 24 degrees. But what is Pisces? Well, it's Venus's sign. It's the water sign. Venus rules by exaltation. So right away, we know it's creativity. Venus, planet of creativity. Arts, adornment, beautification, sweet singing, according to Vedia's Fallon. So there's a real creative flourish that's going to be available this week. We know Mercury is language, so it's creative language, the written language, storytelling, narrativization, words themselves. It's the Mercury in Pisces, the placement of the poetics. James Joyce has Mercury in Pisces. Maya Angelou has Mercury in Pisces. It's known as the poetic Mercury, creativity. So we see the creative flourish of Pisces. And so what might that mean in your world? Where's your creativity this week? Where's your creativity? How has it been renewed in 2025? How are you maybe more equipped to pontificate, more loquacious, if you're more mercurial in terms of how you're feeling into this? What are the deeper philosophies or meanings behind the creative impulses that you're engaging? If you're an artist, how might your creativity have been renewed in this first part of 2025? What creative projects are you wanting to re-engage or launch or really get back going with here mid-April 2025 and into the rest of the year? That would be a primary way of contemplating, in my view, these transits this week and the importance of them. And sometimes it's not even putting pressure on ourselves. No need to think, oh no, what's happening? Set this aside, pretend like you didn't even know about it. What is naturally emergent in your world around your creative life? Those are important pieces of data then, knowing what's happening in the astrology. Remember, what we do is map the movement, two-dimensional abstraction. And then we see our life events and we see where there's resonances or synergies. That's what astrology is. And so it's this week is the temporal notation or the marker in time that we need to examine. And then we look at our lives and say, well, what's going on? I know I'm working on some stuff. I'm like, wow, I had no idea I'd be working on any of the stuff I'm doing right now, or some of it here, 6 months ago. And there it is. This is what I've been spending a lot of time on. So these projects are important because they match temporally the direct station of Mercury and Venus, and that might be one way to look into this. But I want to So one way into it, just like I was suggesting you would do in your personal life, is to look in the outer world. And what are we seeing in the creative realm? And it's been on my radar when I saw these announcements earlier this year that 3 really big TV shows are going to premiere this week. And one of them is The Last of Us Season 2 on April 13th, the Sunday, which includes the full moon and the day that Venus stations direct. You know that these astrologers are involved, and I'll say this here, a little meditation on that. I mean, they're in Hollywood, okay? Many astrologers are in Hollywood. They're working, they've been working there for a long time. They consult astrologers. This is just known fact, and I can assure you that's the case. To see these shows having picked this week to launch just tells you that, okay, they're keyed into the movements of the planets, and they're using this forward movement and this powerful Venusian Piscean moment. They're tethering that energy to this show, The Last of Us Season 2, which was a huge show on HBO, really popular. It's got Pedro Pascal, big actor, he's huge, he's all over culture right now. It's a major show, Bella Ramsey, Gabriel Luna. This is simply the outer world reflecting the measurements of the movements in the heaven, the definition of astrology. We look up to our sky, we measure things, we see how the world is matching that to create meaning for our lives. And it's a great week to do that. This is a major, major show. The other show that I was interested in is Black Mirror Season 7, a cultural phenomenon, Black Mirror. I mean, everybody's heard of it, everybody knows it. They're waiting till this week, and that will launch on the 10th of April. So you're gonna have a new Black Mirror season, which is, you know, an epic creative moment. And then Andor, I don't know if some of you are watching that, the Star Wars TV show, that comes out the 22nd, I think. So there's just these shows. It's just an example of how you can use astrology to launch your creative project if you're electing for the planets to station direct and then go, and we see examples of this in Hollywood. One other thing I wanted to point out here before I go is that the show The White Lotus, and again, why I'm focused on TV shows is that it's the Piscean creative. It's Mercury, the planet of writing and language, Venus, the planet of arts and visual arts, combining in Pisces and stationing direct together. And what is happening creatively then that is responding to or tied to or connected to that. That's the premise. And when you apply it, you get these 2 major shows and at the end. But there's the White Lotus. I don't know how many of you have been following that. And this is a great example of how you can use a direct station. Sometimes it's better to wait until it's over and then you launch. But sometimes you can ride the retrograde and you wait for that direct station to have the final episode. So this Sunday, that's when I'm recording this, is the final episode of White Lotus Season 3, and people are loving it. It's been a cultural phenomenon all over social media, people talking about it even where I am. Everybody's into it, or a lot of people are, and the final episode comes during this very creative week of these pivots. So even though it didn't start after the retrogrades ended, it's tethering its climactic, cathartic episode to the week of these creative pivots with the planets. So think about that in your own world. Are there things that you've been working through over the last 3 weeks or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, depending on whether you're going to trace the Venus or Mercury retrogrades, the precise retrogradation times? Are there things that you've been working on since February or January, even if you're going to trace by sign when these retrogrades began? I like to think about it simply this year. What have you been working through or slogging through since January that you may be having pivots and completions on? What have you been waiting to engage or initiate that now is the time to initiate or engage, or now is the time you're getting resolution this week, maybe next week, maybe the rest of April? I mean, this isn't just like it has to be this week. That's not how astrology works. It's just the blocks are removed, there's some movement forward, and then we just kind of loosely see how that's fitting our lives, hoping to find something that's quite linked or quite accurate. And it's probably going to be that for a lot of you. I read a lot of charts, and I can tell you the literal, both with timing and with symbolism, is often striking. So it wouldn't surprise me if a good chunk of you out there are like, yeah, this thing I've been waiting on finally is happening. This thing that I've been hoping for since last year, If you want to include the Mars retrograde cycle or the Venus retrograde cycle, this thing I've been waiting on since January or February, it's finally happening. It's finally coming together. Look for that in your own life this week, because it's not just these TV shows. Mercury and Venus rule potentially any house in your natal chart. So any topic of life arguably could be affected by this depending on the structure of your nativity. So just look for that forward movement. And I'm happy for you guys. You know, we've all made it. We've gotten through these eclipses. We're coming out of these long retrogrades, and we have this few months here to push forward in our lives in 2025, and I'm wishing that for you. So we'll talk soon. I'm going to wind this video down. You can follow me on Patreon, regular video updates. In addition to the ones I release here on YouTube, I've got a live stream every month where we teach some astrology, textual, getting into the texts and trying to grapple with some of the astrological techniques, and then a weekly video I do, which is just kind of a week ahead, a little bit more granular with the week-to-week movements. So you can find me on Patreon, link is in the description if you want to join us over there. And have a wonderful Piscean creative breakthrough week, second week of April, 7th through the 13th. And I hope you're doing lovely out there. We'll talk soon. Peace, take care, bye-bye.